The female reproductive cycle. What you need to know. Female fertility begins in puberty. Around 4th or 5th grade, many boys first become aware that girls their age are changing in visible ways. Bust lines begin to develop, bodies become more rounded, and monthly complaints of stomach pain suddenly appear. At the time, most young men are focused on their own physical changes and give little thought to what is happening biologically to their female peers. Yet these outward signs are not random. They mark a critical internal shift. The female body is transitioning into fertility. This milestone is called menarche, the onset of the menstrual cycle. From this point forward, a woman's biology begins operating on a repeating reproductive rhythm that will quietly influence her physiology, mood, and behavior for decades. Female reproduction is cyclical by design. Most people are briefly introduced to this concept in basic health classes, but few are taught to appreciate its implications. Female fertility operates on a repeating monthly cycle. Each month, the body prepares the uterus for the possibility of pregnancy. When conception does not occur, the uterine lining is shed and the process resets, beginning again from the start. This rhythm is not incidental, it is a defining feature of female sexual biology. Unlike male fertility, which remains relatively stable day to day, the female body moves through predictable phases that affect hormones, energy levels, mood, and perception. These shifts occur whether they are consciously noticed or not. Understanding this cycle is essential because it directly influences when attraction increases, when it wanes, and when interest may disappear entirely. Female reproduction is largely concealed. Male sexual arousal is difficult to hide. When a man becomes excited, the physical signs are often obvious, immediate, and externally visible. Female reproductive biology operates very differently. One of the functions of the menstrual cycle is to obscure precisely when ovulation occurs, the brief window in which conception is possible. Unlike many other mammals, human females do not display clear, unmistakable visual signals indicating fertility. A woman's reproductive state cannot be reliably determined simply by looking at her. This concealment is not accidental. Because fertility is hidden, much of female sexual psychology is structured around ambiguity rather than disclosure. Emotional expression, body presentation, and situational behavior often serve to blur internal states rather than reveal them directly. This can manifest in subtle ways, including shifting attention through conversation or distraction, modifying appearance to selectively reveal or obscure the body, steering social situations to maintain uncertainty about interest or intent. The hidden nature of female reproduction has shaped behavioral patterns that prioritize indirection, flexibility, and plausible deniability. These patterns extend beyond sexuality and influence female psychology more broadly. Female sexuality is regulated by the cycle. A woman's level of sexual interest does not remain constant. It fluctuates in response to the phases of her menstrual cycle. During menstruation, sexual interest is typically reduced. Attention often shifts away from sex and toward comfort, safety, and social connection. At this stage, women tend to be more reserved in both behavior and appearance, showing less skin and expressing attraction primarily through what can be called contextual factors. These include stability, familiarity, resources, and social environment. As the cycle progresses toward ovulation, priorities change. During ovulation, attraction becomes more physical and instinctive. Traits such as height, broad shoulders, facial symmetry, overall physical presence, and especially social and physical dominance become more salient. At this point, biological cues take precedence over external markers, like income, status symbols, or material success. Sexual openness also tends to increase during this phase. As a result, women are generally more receptive to flirtation, escalation, and approach during ovulation than during menstruation. This is not a minor detail. It is a foundational pattern that explains why attraction can appear inconsistent, unpredictable, or situational when viewed without biological context. Understanding this distinction is critical. Ovulation favors opportunity. During ovulation, noticeable shifts often occur in a woman's mood, behavior, and presentation. Energy levels tend to rise, social warmth increases, and friendliness toward men becomes more pronounced. At the same time, appearance choices may subtly change, with greater emphasis on attractiveness and visibility. From a practical standpoint, this phase represents the period in which sexual receptivity is most likely to peak. An ovulating woman may also be more forgiving of traits or circumstances she would otherwise find unappealing during other phases of her cycle. Reservations that dominate at one point can fade temporarily at another. For this reason, ovulation is generally the most favorable window for initiating romantic or sexual interest. However, it is also the point at which conception is most likely to occur. Menstruation works against momentum. Menstruation often corresponds with a noticeable decline in sexual interest. At this stage, a woman's attention is frequently redirected inward, toward rest, regulation, and emotional balance, rather than outward pursuit or attraction. Hormonal shifts during this phase can significantly influence mood, sociability, and overall disposition. Energy levels may drop, patience can narrow, and tolerance for novelty or disruption often decreases. These internal changes commonly express themselves externally through more conservative behavior, subdued presentation, and less emphasis on appearance. This does not indicate disinterest in general, but it does mean that sexual or romantic engagement is far less likely to take priority. Understanding this phase helps explain why attraction can feel muted, delayed, or temporarily absent. Without biological context, these shifts are often misread as personal rejection rather than cyclical variation. A woman's focus of attraction shifts across her cycle. Attraction does not remain fixed. It changes in emphasis depending on where a woman is in her menstrual cycle. During ovulation, attraction tends to orient toward displays of dominance. Confidence, decisiveness, physical presence, and assertive behavior become more salient and influential during this phase. During menstruation, attraction is more likely to prioritize displays of high value. Stability, reliability, social standing, and contextual security take precedence over raw physical or behavioral dominance. Because these priorities shift predictably, awareness of where a woman may be in her cycle can offer insight into which traits are most likely to resonate at a given time. Timing and alignment matter as much as the traits themselves. During menstruation, attraction favors beta traits. During menstruation, attraction tends to lean toward contextual factors rather than raw sexual pull. Attention is more likely to focus on external and situational qualities such as financial stability, grooming and style, social reputation, communication frequency, living circumstances, and overall social positioning. These elements form what can be described as attraction within context. Who you are socially, how you fit into her environment, and how others perceive you often matter more during this phase than physical intensity or dominance. These softer signals are commonly referred to as beta characteristics. While beta traits can successfully generate comfort, familiarity, and continued attention, they are rarely sufficient on their own to create strong sexual desire. Instead, they tend to maintain engagement rather than ignite it. Understanding this distinction helps explain why certain approaches feel effective at one time and ineffective at another. During ovulation, attraction shifts toward alpha traits. During ovulation, the emphasis of attraction tends to change direction. Physical and behavioral cues become more influential than material or contextual indicators. At this stage, traits such as physical appearance, strength, posture, confidence, and social dominance are more likely to register as attractive than markers like income, possessions, or lifestyle accessories. These qualities are commonly referred to as alpha characteristics. Men who project assertiveness, decisiveness, and physical presence often draw heightened attention during this phase. Visible fitness, strong body language, and ease in social hierarchies tend to stand out more sharply when fertility is at its peak. This shift helps explain why attraction can feel sudden, intense, or narrowly focused at certain times, even when external circumstances remain unchanged. Attraction triggered. during ovulation can increase risk-taking in females. Approaching a woman during ovulation often produces a stronger response than during menstruation. Hormonal shifts at this stage can increase openness, lower inhibition, and amplify responsiveness to certain stimuli. During this phase, behaviors that might normally be dismissed or resisted can feel more compelling. A woman who would otherwise maintain firm boundaries may temporarily relax them, not because her values have changed, but because her biological priorities have shifted. This effect becomes more pronounced in the presence of strong alpha signals. Displays of confidence, assertiveness, and social dominance can resonate more deeply during ovulation. When these cues are present, receptivity to conversation, engagement, and escalation often increases, even if external factors such as peer opinion or social friction would normally discourage interest. From a biological perspective, these traits signal intensity, strength, and genetic desirability. They may register as exciting or risky, yet simultaneously valuable. Understanding this pattern helps explain why attraction during ovulation can feel sudden, disproportionate, or out of character when viewed outside of its biological context. Understanding the cycle creates strategic awareness. Awareness of the menstrual cycle provides useful context for interpreting attraction and response. When you understand how priorities shift across different phases, behavior that once seemed confusing often becomes predictable. By recognizing when beta-oriented signals are more effective and when alpha-oriented signals carry greater impact, you can adjust your approach with greater precision. Timing matters. Certain moments favor comfort, reassurance, and social alignment, while others favor confidence, decisiveness, and assertive presence. Alpha displays tend to stimulate sexual interest. Beta displays tend to foster safety, familiarity, and emotional ease. Neither set of traits is sufficient on its own. When applied appropriately and in balance, they work together to hold attention and sustain attraction. The advantage does not come from manipulation, but from alignment. Understanding the cycle allows you to respond to shifting conditions rather than working against them.